All right, guys, check. Some more biological psychology. We're gonna go over this diagram of the cortex. The diagram of the cortex, and I guess we'll do a little bit of the lower level structures. I turn my glasses off, probably, right? The lower level structures. Okay. So I'll just kind of maybe try to do this myself. We got the medulla, cerebellum, pons, pituitary gland. You got the thalamus, the midbrain, hypothalamus, corpus callosum. So hypothalamus is H, so we're good. Right next to it is the thalamus, but we'll do midbrain, D. And then we have cerebellum, which is C. We have the thalamus, which will be here, F, pretty sure. And the pons, which is A. Medulla. We have the cerebellum, which is the little brain. Corpus callosum, it connects the two hemispheres, left and right hemisphere of the brain. It's kind of the bridge to the brain. It's one that they do the split brain surgery, where they cut that, so they cut off the connection between the left and right hemisphere to kind of isolate the two sides to see which side does what, and they're operating on the brain pretty much. So the interesting video we saw in class. So I'm kind of good on this right here. I might do a little, I have a test tomorrow, so I might do a little bit of research tomorrow. Excuse me. So this is what I really wanted to do. And so you got the frontal lobe. So the brain has 6 lobes. There's 4 main lobes. You got the frontal lobe. It does the motor functioning. It's like the output of everything that comes to the body. It's the main part of the brain that deals with most of the output, most of the processing of the thoughts and the feelings and emotions and smell and sense, hearing and you know, feelings and emotions. Everything. If it's sight, it's gonna go to the occipital and it's gonna process and go out this way, and then come back down to the body. And I wonder how it does that. Honestly, I'm thinking about it now. And then you have so you have the frontal lobe, which is this part, number 9. I'm just trying to figure out. I know this is the back. This is the cerebellum. Got the frontal lobe. You got the parietal lobe, which has to do with touch. Think about the soma sensory. I think this is a T. Soma sensory. Let me get that name down. But that is the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe has to do with touch. I think about like a pariah. Like, it's a pariah. Like some of the creepy guy that just wants to touch you. Like parietal, touch, and soma is the body. You think about touch, like you're feeling something, right? And so parietal soma, so that is the parietal. Parietal lobe. It's right here. And the parietal, somatosensory, somatosensory. So that has to do with touch. That's parietal. And then temporal. Temporal has to do with sound, tempo, sound. Temporal has to do with sound. And it's more on the bottom side. There, more on the bottom side right here. And then, so the frontal lobe. Occipital is a vision. That's in the back. Occipital has to do with vision. And then the little brain, the cerebellum, that has to do with like functioning and balance, coordination. When you get drunk and stuff, this is what gets affected. And so those are the 4 main lobes. The cerebellum's not a lobe, but it is considered a midbrain. This is important in that sense. And then you have, so now we're focusing on parts of it, little creases, actual specific sections of it. The depressions and the grooves are called the sulci, the sulci, the sulcus. So sulci is singular, the sulcus is plural. That's all the little lines in the brain, the sulci, the sulcus. Everything in between, like the fat of the brain, that's the gyri, the gyrus. The gyri is a singular, plural is a gyrus. the gyruses. And so let's focus on the frontal side. So we have a main sulcus, like a main crease in the brain. It's right here. This is called a central sulcus. Central, think of wording. A lot of times, I was talking to my friend yesterday when we were actually studying together. Shout out my friend Angie. A lot of times, if you just pay attention to the wording, right? We went over our study guide and it said something about the processing. And we chose an answer that didn't say processing. And we're like, oh, if we just would have focused on the word. But again, when you're studying with somebody, for me in particular, I'm thinking about them, I'm worried about them, I'm worried about a threat, like this part of not knowing how to trust people and being sort of paranoid of the world and having PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety. A lot of times, that's why when someone tells me their name, it's hard for me to remember this shit. And it's all kind of connected the way the brain works, right? I'm like a sort of a case for that. A lot of people remember my name, and I'm like, fuck, what was your name again? I just ask them, just to learn their name, because it's not from a malice or like I'm better than you. I don't know, you're not important to know your name. A lot of times they like or wonder like, why does he know my name? Even some beautiful ladies that like, he doesn't know my name? I'm beautiful, you should know. But I'm like, I kind of fuck with them in that way too. I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I do. But I don't know their name. And so that's kind of like an impetus or like a motivation or an incentive to be like, well, what's your name? And other people around are like, what the fuck, he doesn't know her name? And they're like, I know some people know my name, but a lot of it is because when I'm talking to them, I'm thinking about shit. Like, I sound this way, my breath smell. What are they thinking? Are they, fuck, dude? Are they a threat? Like I said, Anyway, so it's just distractions in my brain. So that's part of the reason why I probably didn't get that answer right. But the key is when you're reading something, a lot of times you just get the word right, and it'll be repeated in a book. You're like, okay, this author kind of likes to use. I'm thinking about a word I've been hearing in a book I'm reading recently. I had to look it up as well. They'll use the same word over and over, and like, okay, sounds important. It's kind of a word that's identifying something. Like I've been reading some writers saying property a lot. The property of this, the property. So what is that? Think about property. I own that. It's the property. Property. It's like that thing that makes up something. It's like one part of a thing that makes up a whole thing, right? What are the properties of that thing? What's on the property, or what sort of it's kind of like the components, right? What makes the thing up? And yeah. So right here is a central sulcus, number 6, central sulcus. And that separates the parietal from the frontal lobe, right? Okay, think about that. Separates the parietal from the frontal lobe. Number 1, think about pre and post. But look at number 1, it's on the gyrus. It's in between the sulcuses, right? So it's a gyrus. So it fits in. This is the front of the brain, the front of the cortex, the cerebrum. It's in the front of the cerebrum, also known as the cerebral cortex. This is considered to be the cerebrum. This is all the cerebrum here. It's the higher functioning brain. This is going to be the prefrontal. Pre-central gyrus. The pre-central gyrus. And where's number 1 here? I'm looking at it backwards. Yeah, pre-central gyrus. Front, like pre, the preface, the beginning. Pre-game warm-up, pre-game interview. The pre-central, because this is the central sulcus. This is the pre-central gyrus, because this is the fat. And this is the post. Number 2 is the post-central gyrus, like behind. Right, it comes the afters. Just think about, we're speaking about the location of it. Oh, there's a word I'm looking for. I've been using it. I can't remember it now. I like to use words. That's how you remember it. It's the location of it. Like, fuck. Okay, so that's it right there. So let's do this one. So now there's another big sulcus. There's another big sulcus here, and I think it's 14. It's this one. It's also called a Sylvian fissure, but there's also another word for it. Sylvian fissure was more of like the term of maybe like a scientist that discovered it. Yeah, the lateral sulcus, the side sulcus, right? The side. So this must be the sulcus on the side of the brain because it's lateral. No, it's like the lateral. Let's do a lateral. The side. Contralateral, opposite side. Ipsilateral, same side. So this is the lateral sulcus. I've been calling it the Sylvian fissure because it is, but it's in quotations. I guess scientists, that's what they call it. Researchers, they also call it the Sylvian fissure. I guess it's most commonly known as the Sylvian fissure. A fissure is like a crack, a long crack, groove, depression in the land, right? A big old fissure. Like you say from high, the Grand Canyon is a big ass fissure. So this is the lateral sulcus is also known as the Sylvian fissure, right? Sylvian fissure. So this is the temporal lobe. So this Sylvian fissure separates the temporal lobe from the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. Okay. And then, so I'm not too familiar with this. This is the temporal, right? This is called the inferior. Maybe this is just the inferior gyrus. Inferior gyrus, number 8. Inferior frontal gyrus. So this is the frontal lobe. So let's remember that. I should remember. I should just try to guess. You know, inferior frontal lobe. The inferior. So if it's the inferior frontal lobe, inferior frontal gyrus. What that tells me, there's a superior, a higher. It's not like, oh, better or lesser. It's above or below. So this is below probably a superior frontal gyrus, but must not be important, you know, because he didn't care to teach us it. What it's telling me is that maybe the sulcuses are what's important right here. So this is the inferior frontal gyrus. And this here, we're still on the temporal, right? This is also a sulcus. It's number 7. So something, is it the medial? No, that's not the medial. Actually, I can't really see it through the video. So number 7 is, I think it's a superior. I think it's superior temporal sulcus, number 7. Yes, it is. Superior temporal sulcus. Because it's above these other sulcuses. So I just... Superior... And I remember there was 2 superiors within the... There's 2 superior temporal somethings. So superior temporal sulcus. So number 3 is the superior temporal gyrus. And then number 15 is... Since it's in the middle, I think it's called like the middle... The middle, it's a gyrus. I don't think it's called middle gyrus. 15. Okay, think about temporal. It's in the temporal, middle temporal gyrus. So 15 is middle temporal gyrus. Middle temporal gyrus, number 15. And that's the temporal part of the lobe. And then, so we already got number 8. Number 8 was the inferior frontal. Yeah, I remember now. I'm looking at it from this angle. So number 8, which is right here on the frontal, it's the inferior frontal gyrus. It's inferior because it's at the bottom of the frontal, and it's a gyrus, and it's in the frontal. And so now we have to work on the parietal. What's going on in the parietal? I know it's like super or like marginal. What's going on in the parietal? Number 4 and 5. Okay, so number 5, angular gyrus. So number 5 is the angular gyrus. The angular. I know this is like super something. Supramarginal gyrus. So number 4 is supramarginal gyrus. Supramarginal. Marginal, I don't know why they call it marginal. So these two are good. I know it's considered to be the, what's number 5? Angular. Let's look about angular gyrus. And number 4 is supramarginal gyrus. So number 6 is central sulcus. Number 2 is post-central gyrus. Number 1 is pre-central gyrus. Number 4 is the supramarginal gyrus. Number 5 is the angular gyrus. Number 10 is obviously the parietal area. Number 9 is the frontal area. Number 11 is the occipital area. Number 12 is the temporal area. Then we have the cerebellum, middle brain on the bottom. Number 15 is the middle temporal gyrus. Number 3 is the superior temporal gyrus. Number 7 is the sylvian fissure, also known as the lateral gyrus. No, that's 14. Excuse me, that's 14. Number 7 is the superior temporal sulcus. Number 7, yes. Number 8 is the inferior frontal gyrus. And so that's it so far, guys. Peace.